I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast that's set entirely on a soundstage, because this week we watched Underworld.
Written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin.
Directed by Norman Stewart.
And aired between January 7th and January 28th, 1978. Again, still not, continuously during that period. That was sucked. Because this story sucked. No, well...
okay. No. Before we get into your critical reevaluations of the merits of Underworld, let's talk about how this story too had a disastrous behind-the-scenes production. So, again, like I theorized last week, and like I noticed last week, there's a little bit of a pattern appearing where these stories all seem to just have really, really disastrous production backgrounds.
Yeah.
But it's essentially Anthony Reed comes in to take over from Bob Holmes. Weirdly enough, we just watched Assignment 5 for Sapphire Steel this week, which was half written by Anthony Reed, so that's weird.
Check out Inevitable, classic sci-fi podcast.
But Anthony Reed comes in, and he's like, well, we need someone who we know is consistent and dependable and will turn in a good story every time. And for that reason, I'm hiring Bob Baker and Dave Martin. To their credit, they turned in a story on time. Anthony Reed apparently told them to look at Greek mythology for, quote, inspiration, unquote, because...
I read that he told them, explicitly, make this, just, turn in a version of Jason and the Argonauts. Don't take inspiration, don't be influenced, just write that story again, but, in space.
I mean, possibly.
That's what the Doctor Who wiki told me. And, chaotic, hellhole that it is. I believe it, I guess, for some reason.
Yeah, I'm just going off the Shannon Sullivan site, which I don't know if it has the same sources as the wiki, but in that one it just says that Anthony Reed, what is it? The previous script editor, Bob Holmes, had taken inspiration from classic literature a lot, and Anthony Reed decided that was a good route to go, and that's why he told them, boys, what about Greek literature? And they're like, the Bristol Boys, as I found out they're called. I actually think I knew that before this week. So
yeah, we knew that.
I don't know why I'm saying as I found out as if it was new information, but the Bristol Boys... Well, anyway, Graham Williams was like, okay, here's my pitch. We're going to go epic. It's going to be big. It's going to be awesome. We're going to build 2 great sets. We got a cavern. We've got a ship. We're going to have huge budget. I'm going on vacation. Don't mess this up while I'm gone. And he came back, and the story after this, total disarray.
The studio was burned to the ground.
I mean, metaphorically speaking, might have been better. But he comes back, and the story after this is in complete disarray. It's running way over budget, and that budget's got to come from somewhere. Because this story also running way over budget. This story is disastrously over budget. The only set they've built while he was gone was the R1C, and he's like, "What did you spend the entire budget on?" And they're like, "We built a spaceship. We built an actual we built an actual spaceship." So they were
reminds me of reminds me of when I was in college and all the books in the library, or at least 90% of them, fell off the shelves because of an earthquake. And instead of fixing that, they spent a lot of time and money giving each room an accent wall, which is basically a wall that is a different color than the other 3 walls of the room. And it took 5 years to put all the books back.
It didn't. I seem to remember you telling me they just closed that section of the library.
Yeah, the library was closed for 90% of the time that I was at the school. So.
Well, it's certainly a solution.
At least those accent walls looked terrible.
Wow, I really thought you were going to say at least those accent walls looked good, but you got me. You got me with that one. Well, so Graham Williams was faced with with two options. He's like, either completely cut the last serial of the season, use the budget left over to finish Underworld, or try to do both and just slash the budget for Underworld in like a tenth.
But he chose secret option C and cut the Invasion of Time. No.
We wish, but alas, he decided instead to cut the budget of Underworld in 10 and was like, all right, what you've done already, that's it. You're done. You're done. Everything else we'll just CSO. Apparently he did like actual investigation on this with what was his name now? The production assistant, I think. And with a guy who was supposed to do the CSO. And the guy was like, yeah, this is totally doable. It'll look great. Trust me. Turns out it didn't look great. Graham Williams was actually severely disappointed with how it turned out, but he didn't have an option because they had no money left. So he just had to go with it.
Well, it's like, what were they expecting? Like, CSO never looked great. And this definitely looks worse than normal, but like, even normal doesn't look good.
It's... Yeah, so they decided to film the entire cave sequence on the CSO soundstage. And that's it. That's your boy. They also reused the R1C set for the 71C, the P70. God damn it, it said P70. This is some Terry Nation-esque naming.
Yeah, definitely. So, accordingly, this story has been voted multiple times as one of the worst Doctor Who stories ever made.
Rightfully so.
And maybe it deserves that title, that ranking. I don't think so after having watched it again. I don't think it's as bad as I thought it was the first time. I don't think it's great. I don't even really think it's good. I think it's like between like almost good and like a low level of good.
I think it's still bad. I liked it better than before, but only because I realized the story moves a lot quicker than I remembered, and it feels like it's over in 10 minutes, which is the best part of the story.
Yeah, a lot of my reevaluation of this comes from like the actual... I don't want to say the writing, because like the dialogue might have not been the best, but like the plot I think was solid.
Well, that's because it's like ancient Greek literature. The plot's not really original to Bob Baker and Dave Martin. Like,
yeah, well, so they pulled from that, and they pulled from also, you know, classic sci-fi stuff of like a genetic cache like being lost and like a civilization starting from that, which Doctor Who has done like at least once before this.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In Leela's introduction story, which was like not long before this.
So what you're saying is the best parts of this story are the ones that aren't original and were just totally stolen from everything else.
Well, look, nothing's original. Every like element in any story has been done before.
Yeah, but the other stories are better at hiding it.
That means they're worse.
What? You heard it here first, folks. Keon calls Underworld the best Doctor Who story ever made.
I didn't say that. I just said that they were worse. I just said that they were worse.
You basically said every other story is worse, which means this has to be by association the best.
No, I implied that every story that has had these elements and has hidden them more has been worse. Not every story has used these elements, and not every story has hidden them.
This story does a pretty bad job of hiding them. Let's be honest. I mean, the minions are literally called the minions in Jason and the Argonauts.
They're little yellow, creatures.
All right.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Despicable Me was the most surreal movie I had watched until 2 days ago, when my roommate and I watched an old Disney movie called Babes in Toyland. And let me tell you, that movie was actually the most surreal movie I've ever watched. I'm not even going to go into it. Most people probably have never even heard of this movie. They probably don't even know it exists, but it's on Disney Plus, and it was just, I'm just going to leave it at that. It was the most surreal movie watching experience of my life.
Well, all right. I have no idea what that movie is, but
if you do watch that movie, watch out for the old lady extra who's really into it and is super excited every time she's on screen. Look out for her.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have any Disney Plus account having friends, family members, or acquaintances that I can leech off of, so I probably won't watch it.
One day. I read that the R1C may be named for the apparently a popular at the time misconception that the story of Jason and the Argonauts was recorded in a story called the Argosy, in much the same way that the journey of Odysseus was the Odyssey.
Huh. Well, wasn't the boat? They have like their boat is called the Argo, right? Or something like that.
Argo.
Yeah. Yeah.
But R1C is kind of really far from Argo, but not so far from Argosy.
Right. Could have called it like RO or something, or like R0, you know? Like.
I also read that it was during this story that Louise Jameson was like, yeah, I'm kind of want to... apparently tensions were really high while filming because Tom Baker was being his usual dickish self, and because he apparently didn't like the character of Leela, and there was a lot of tension between him and Louise Jameson, especially this week for some reason. There was just a lot of tension between the two of them.
Yeah, I remember reading something along the lines of like Tom Baker saying like that he didn't like Leela, so he would always just interrupt Louise Jameson's lines and step on them on purpose.
Wow.
Do you remember like hearing about that? Or am I just
vaguely,
going crazy?
But I'm not surprised because he kind of does that a lot in this story.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. I forgot actually how much Tom Baker like commanded each scene that he was in.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sometimes good and is often to the detriment of the scene, I think.
Because none of the other actors can keep up.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, apparently, I read that since it was during the filming of the story that Louise Jameson was like, I'm out. Peace. Graham Williams called up Elizabeth Sladen and was like, you want to come back as Sarah Jane? She's like, busy. So he was like, and that's when he conceived Romana, as we'll see later on. But apparently, Imogen Bickford Smith's agent, she plays Tala, like really tried to hype Tala up as Leela's replacement in Graham Williams. And Anthony Reed were like, no, that's not no.
Yeah, I totally forgot. Totally forgot Tala existed because she had like one line and 5 seconds of screen time.
Like most of the actually huge supporting cast of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also forgot how violent Leela was.
Yeah. I remember that being... Or I remember thinking I was somewhat like, you know, endearing or just like a haha, like just part of her character type thing. But like I kind of put off by it this time around.
Me too. I also kind of remembered it being a point of character development that she became like less violent and, warlike as her tenure went on. But this is like her second to last story, and she's just like, as soon as she wakes up and being pacified, she's like, who did it? I'm gonna kill them. And the doctor's like, whoa. John Leeson back again as K9, because I seem to remember at this point he was on a like week-to-week contract at this point, or serial to serial, which is why he gets replaced by David Brierley for a season. Shudders in bad memories.
Yeah, well, considering Bob Baker and Dave Martin created K9, you know, perhaps that's why he is in this. Perhaps not, but, you know, could have something to do with it. John Leeson, I'm talking about, not K9 itself. Yeah. Although, weirdly, okay, so my memory, I could be completely wrong about this, but my memory of K9 was that, like, every time Like in every Bob Baker and Dave Martin story, like K9 had something to do because they created K9 and they obviously really liked K9, and that like most of the other writers just kind of like put K9 out of commission or barely did anything with K9. But in this story, that's like not really the case. Like K9 doesn't really have much screen time here.
He pilots the ship and then vanishes forever.
You didn't like those those scenes of him just like wheeling through the corridors, like that just only existed to show that like K9 was like there and in existence for this story.
They conveniently ignore the fact that K9 like can't go upstairs in this story.
They also conveniently ignore the fact that like the TARDIS is on the ship at the end, and like when they're arguing over like how they're not going to make escape velocity because there's too many people on the ship, the Doctor doesn't even like mention the fact that they can just all like file into the TARDIS and just leave.
This story to me looked a lot, and I guess we're going to get into the plot now in a second, but looked a lot like it was going to go the way of the massacre, where the Doctor's just here making everything worse, and then he leaves because he's like, the minions have gotten their genetic race bank. The Doctor's now like annoying the Oracle later on, like making everything worse because the Oracle's getting all pissed at him, like, no, Doctor, stop, they've already got, no, stop. But then it turns out like he saves the day at the end, but like the story was very close to going the way of the Doctor messing everything up for them.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, he still does. Like, he comes in and tears down an entire society. As terrible as that society is, he just comes in and, like, destroys it.
He also basically commits, like, murder. I mean, he does tell them, like, it's the wrong cylinders, but he makes absolutely no effort for them to actually, like, understand that he's telling the truth here.
Well, that's part of the ploy, is, like, he's actually telling the truth, but it seems like such a bluff, such a terrible lie, that...
Oh, yeah, I'm sure those guys are really great for like, really laughing all the way home because the Doctor pulled such a great ploy on them. Ha ha. As the pieces of flesh and viscera float across space.
Reminds me of that episode of SpongeBob where they're like, where Squidward, like, he wants to buy a pie, but like the people he's like, he's like, hey, I want to buy one of these pies. And they're like, these aren't pies, they're actually bombs. And he was like, and he goes, have you seen this one? So he goes like,
No.
So yeah, there's just like, it's right outside the Krusty Krab. There's just like a pirate ship, a huge one. And he's like, hey, they have like a ton of pies. And he's like, hey, can I buy a pie? And they're like, these are bombs, not pies. And he's like, oh shoot, like I would have bought one if they were pies. I guess I'll just like leave. And they're like, oh, in that case, then they are pies. So he buys one. And SpongeBob eats it, and then he, like, right after he eats it, he realizes, like, oh shoot, like, they're probably kidding. Or like, they're probably lying. That was probably a bomb. And then the whole episode is about, like, this guilt trip that he has, and he just fed SpongeBob a bomb. Now that, if you want to talk about surreal nonsense, just watch that episode.
Now, if you want to talk about surreal in the Lovecraftian way nonsense, I saw somebody made this very well illustrated comic where Patrick is like, do you know how starfish feed SpongeBob? They inject their foes with a venom so they slowly break down outside their body so they can consume, and he just kills SpongeBob, and then he like starts rampaging through town eating people because the starfish needs to feed, and then like Sandy and Squidward try to kill him, and he's just like, did you know that sea stars can regrow limbs? And so now there's two of them, and they're like, oh shoot, oh god, oh god. It's also revealed in that comic that the Krusty Krab secret recipe, the secret recipe is Patrick. At some point, Mr. Krab stole a piece of Patrick and grew his own Patrick and just chops off his limbs and turns him into Krabby Patties every so often. He just regrows him. He's been keeping this Patrick alive, torturing him for years to make Krabby Patties. Yeah, this is a lot more horrifying now that I say it out loud, even though like it was pretty unsettling to read, and I don't know why I read the whole thing.
Yeah, Just, that's one of those things of like next time you're questioning your life decisions, just remember that exists and someone dedicated like a large amount of time to creating.
Yeah, because again, it's really well illustrated. Like, it's very well illustrated. I'll see if I can find it for the show notes.
Oh boy.
Anyway, let's get into the plot. So, smash cut. First shot of the episode is Leela in the skimpiest outfit in like a long time in Doctor Who for us. There was not much there. I'm gonna be honest. There's not much there. Any less, and we'd be seeing some things.
Well, my first note is somewhat similar in tone. I feel like Leela expressionless operating the TARDIS slowly is going to set the tone for this entire story.
I mean, it set the tone for Leela's entire contribution to this story's plot.
I guess. The Doctor walks in with like a smock, holding like a little easel thing.
He's like painting in the other room, and I guess they didn't have the budget to show Tom Baker messing up the canvas.
And it turns out they look on the view screen and there's nothing there. It's just complete and total blankness. And they're like, oh, look, nothing's there. And K9's like, we're not alone.
Yeah, my note right now is like, this is a lot less interesting version of Edge of Destruction right now.
Well, K9 was just dropping some cryptic dialogue in the background because they were kind of just ignoring him for a while, and he kept saying, like, we're not alone, like... So, a little creepy there, a little unsettling. But as it turns out, they are headed into, like, a spiral nebula that just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, who's driving this damn thing, and how do they not see this coming from a mile away?
Blake/Avon, maybe? They always, like, ran into black holes, and they're like, oh, look, like, a black hole. Or, like, another weird thing in space that we should definitely not be going into, but that we're going to go into anyway.
Well, black holes? Okay, well, you can't see black holes, so I can forgive them for that one. The spiral nebula is, like, bright and pink, and it's like, right... Well, as they go into the spiral nebula, they like land on the ship, which we find out later is the R1C.
Right. Yeah. The Doctor knows where they are immediately. The ship belongs to the Minions, which every time they said this, I just thought of Despicable Me.
Every time they said this, I just thought of how they reveal that they're going to their new planet. And, you think it's a new planet, you could name it anything. You could literally even name it New Minyas, like New York type thing. Or you could name it like Bob or anything. But you know what they named their new planet? Freaking Minyas 2. Minyas 2 Electric Boogaloo. I
forgot about that. Well, considering... all they seem to have on mind is the quest. Maybe they don't have room in their brains for extraneous details and names and such.
Yeah, but imagine having a kid, and you and your partner sit down one day with your kid. Your kid's like, Dad, what planet do we live on? And you're like, son, we live on Minyas 2. And he goes, Minyas 2? What happened to Minyas 1? And then you're like, oh boy, here we go. Buckle up. I'm about to tell you how our race almost got wiped out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it really puts into perspective why this planet is just called Earth and not Earth 2. Because our ancestors didn't want to confuse anyone or look like laughingstocks.
Hang on a minute. Wait, hang on a minute. Are you saying we're aliens? Were you saying we just decided to name our planet Earth and not Earth 2, even though there's no good reason why we would have named it Earth
Look,
2?
All I'm saying is what I said, and no more, and no less.
Well, I want to pause for a brief moment here because the Minions talk about how the fact that they've been regenerating for 1,000 years trying to get to this bank, this genetic bank, and their ship is falling apart because it wasn't designed to regenerate as much as them. And they asked the Doctor if he knows anything of regeneration. And now I know we talked a couple of weeks ago about how we didn't think the Doctor ever says his number in the classic show, and we had that comment from Paul, who said that the fifth Doctor had indicated that he was the fifth. And there was a line here that I noted down, actually, where the fourth Doctor seems to imply that he's the fourth Doctor because he says, "Oh, I've been through it 2 or 3 times," which it could just be a throwaway line, but the fact that he literally says 3 times, which is actually how many times we've seen it on screen, makes it seem like he chose those numbers for a reason, I guess, is my point. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that Jodie Whittaker's Doctor forgot all of her previous regenerations before William Hartnell, or maybe not the fact, but like the theory that that's the case, like can coincide with this.
Yeah, it's actually interesting now that he says 2 or 3 and not 3 or 4, because if you think about it, we never saw the second Doctor regenerate into the third Doctor, so it is like 2 or 3 times, because we know for sure that 1 to 2 and 3 to 4 happened, but the third is like 2 to 3, like,
Yeah. So another thing that we kind of get in this initial setup portion of the story is that we get the introduction of the Time Lord non-intervention policy thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Doctor explains that the Time Lord, or the minions, Minions, yeah, came to regard the Time Lords as gods, which eventually led to a lot of conflict and armed revolt, and that's what the Time Lords, kind of recognized that and decided to not intervene in any of their planets anymore, on paper.
Yeah, on paper. This is interesting. This is interesting because it plays absolutely no bearing on the plot, like, at all.
Yeah, this is also interesting. You got to wonder how many people were up in arms over this, of like, man, Anthony Reed and Bob Baker and Dave Martin and even Tom Baker, like, no respect whatsoever for anything that came before. How could they do this?
Hadn't we seen Gallifrey by this point?
Yes.
Didn't Invasion of Time happen before this?
No, Invasion of Time is the very next story, but...
a Deadly Assassin has happened before this, though.
Before this, yes. So, but like, this is in the same vein, actually, as what the Chris Chibnall era has done. And in terms of, like, introducing something totally brand new out of nowhere that is pretty important for the Doctor's past. And, just makes me wonder how many people were up in arms and throwing a fit over this.
Well, probably no one. Or if anybody did, there wasn't enough of a communications infrastructure for you to be able to gang up with like-minded fans like people have done now. It's not like you can go down to your local pub and be like, "All right, boys, time to storm the BBC television centre."
Guess not.
Also, like, probably most of the people watching the show at this point, like, don't care about, like, the long, varied history of Doctor Who, right? Because Tom Baker brought in a lot of new viewers who, like, probably didn't know a lot of the pre-Fourth Doctor lore, so I guess my point is it may not necessarily be obvious to them that it's new information in this story.
Yeah, I guess.
Which is, like, something I've been thinking about, actually. Like, is the reason why there's so much of this uproar about the Chibnall, I don't know, the Chibnall master plan, whatever the hell we're calling it, because such a large, I guess, percentage of people watching Doctor Who now are fans who know, like, a large amount of lore. Like, I'm sure most of the casual fans just literally don't care,
yeah.
Or if they do, like, way not as much.
Yeah, I mean, look, for every one person complaining about this or anything Doctor Who related online, there's like 10 to 20 who, like, have watched it and, like, have no comment to make whatsoever about it. Good or bad.
Yeah, I guess Invasion of Time is kind of Anthony Reid's Timeless Children. Is that what we're saying then? That's That's what
Well,
we've decided.
that's actually what I was getting at by bringing all this up, is that, like, when Anthony Reed steps in, like, things change and we get big revelations.
They're not so big,
They're
though.
not
I
so
mean,
big, but, like, we get big things, you know? And we get Colin Baker. Because he was in Invasion of Time, if I remember correctly. He was playing
as that
Commander
random
Maxwell,
guard.
yeah.
I still like when people are like, so if Peter Capaldi's doctor chose his face to remind him to save everybody, like, was Colin Baker's doctor just like reminding himself to be a good guard or to kill people, or like, well, you know, what was his motivation for choosing Commander Maxwell's face? Like, when, you know, what was going on there?
I still can't believe, actually, that what's his face from the Fires of Pompeii wasn't just like a mind wiped 12th Doctor. I'm actually surprised that they didn't go that route, considering.
Don't worry, Chris Chibnall's, he's got it in the back of his mind. Probably.
Yeah, that's true. It could still happen. They could still retcon everything. And when I say they could still retcon everything, I mean everything. From an unearthly child onward.
That's like we are so far off topic. This is the last thing I'll say off topic. I promise. We'll get back to the story. But it reminds me of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. There's an episode about season 3, I think, or season 4, where the leader of the station is shown this vision by these prophets of a black man in the 1960s, because he's a black man, writing a sci-fi story, or actually in the 80s, sorry, writing a sci-fi story about basically Deep Space Nine in the future. And it was supposed to be it's this whole commentary on race and politics. But anyway, the writers of the show like heavily considered ending Deep Space Nine by like pulling back from like the set to reveal the soundstage and have that author character standing off to the side holding the script, implying the entire show was like his creation with like in universe. So I imagine Chris Chibnall could just do something like that, like at the end, just pull away from the soundstage to reveal, like, I don't know, Stephen Moffat standing there, revealing that the show we've been watching has actually just been like the machinations of this fictional version of Stephen Moffat or something.
Sure. Just throw in like a Force ghost of Verity Lambert and you're good to go.
Oh, even better, actually, they could pull away from the soundstage, zoom out, and we see like the writer of quote Doctor Who standing over there, and it's just like the kid from Listen, who's
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of uproar recently there's definitely been a lot of uproar about Moffat's comments on Listen. Or even better, no,
well, we don't need to get into that.
We don't at all.
Let's get back to the story.
Wait. Wasn't the kid from Listen Danny Pink?
It was only implied to be. It was never stated on screen.
Fine.
That's something that just fans have communally agreed upon. But again, it's not said on screen. And if it's not said on screen, it's not canon. No.
I kind of agree with that. I agree with what you just said more than I agree with, like, we need to canonize everything Stephen Moffat has tweeted about with regard to Listen. But anyway, whatever. Let's just get back to the story at hand.
So
they describe like what their purpose is, and we get the glorious, line, the glorious, I'm blanking on the word, catchphrase. Sure, let's go with that. The quest is the quest. I forgot that line came from this, but I've like that line has been in my head, not constantly, but like it's been there since we first watched this in like what would have been like 2016 or 15.
Damn, it's hard to believe it's that
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
That was before all the radical changes in life direction my life took.
That was before all the radical changes that like the world seems now, like in hindsight, like to have taken whatever, you know.
Yeah, like the growing cynicism in our podcast can be directly correlated not only with us getting older, but also with like the changeover of power in 2017.
Wait, okay, so you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, or if it's just going to spiral into something even longer, like a longer tangent. But like, what radical change did your life take? Like, it's like, yeah.
I
Wow. Well, after that little bit, we're back. I just want to commemorate all the stuff I just heard by saying there was a big portion that just got cut.
This is one of those times where like if we had a Patreon and we were releasing like unedited versions of the episodes on Patreon, like that would still be cut. That would still be gone. This is when it would be quote unedited unquote. Yeah. There's just a black hole like in the podcast right there now. Much like the black hole for where the budget went for the story.
Well, okay, speaking of black holes and like stellar like formations,
astrophysics.
The quest that is the quest that's leading them to the race banks that they've been looking for thousands of years has finally almost reached its end because within the nebula are the race banks. A wonderful sentence for you.
No, but they don't even know for sure. They just think because the stellar nebula didn't exist when the P7E came through here, and their entire species now hinges on this theory that the P7E must have gone into this nebula because it vanished in this region of space. And the Doctor's like, look, the P7E may be in there. It may have gone in there, but here's the thing, it never came out. And if you go in there, you're not coming out either. And they're like, the quest is the quest.
So they decide to go in, and all hell breaks loose.
Well, so there's this hilarious scene now, because they're going in, and all these rocks are being magnetized to the ship's hull and weighing it down. And they see a planet in the nebula, but they're like, there's no power because the rocks are all sticking to the ship. Reminds me of that scene in The Incredibles when he's getting blasted with all those sticky balls and then weighing him down. But anyway, the Doctor and Leela are like sitting in these very comfortable looking chairs that I'm sure the production crew stole from someone's living room. And someone's going, they're smashing us to pieces. And, most, if not all, other science fiction shows would generate some dramatic tension here by like shaking the camera so it looks like the ship is shaking and getting crushed and there's actual tension, but whoever says this, they say this and the camera is like entirely still. There's like actually no visual indication that anything bad is happening to the ship, and I just thought it was hilarious.
That was the case on Blake 7-2 in Duel. And I think, but like that one worked so well, like.
Well, because the Liberator was like practically indestructible.
But even on Travis's like little ship with the mutoids, there was no like movement of the if I remember correctly. I mean, I don't know. I just think there's more like contributing to this that made it fail than just that. That was a part of it for sure, but like I think there's more contributing factors here. Like the fact that none of this is very interesting.
Yeah, well, like I said, what's very interesting is they're sitting on these chairs I'm sure they stole from someone's living room.
Yeah. Well, so were you into the premise at this point? Like, had that grabbed your interest?
Yes, but it was about to rapidly lose me.
Yeah, I remember that being the case for me when we first watched it. I don't know if you remember, but I think we came out of Underworld saying, like, yeah, episode 1 was, like, all right. Like, it was at least solid. And then it just was totally downhill from there.
I somewhat still agree with that, although I actually think episode 4 is better than I may have given it credit for before.
Yeah, on this second viewing, I definitely think once... I can't believe I'm saying this. I really can't believe I am. But, like, I think when they get down to the caves...
Yeah, neither can I.
It gets better.
Whoa. I'm going to distance myself from that opinion as far as possible.
Yeah.
Distance my... You can defend that one on Twitter like I know you're going to have to.
No.
I'm going to be over here in my nice safe, I don't agree with that bubble.
Look, I don't have to defend anything. I can just make these claims and not explain them, and when anyone asks why or on what basis I'm making them or what validity they have, I can just say something stupid that doesn't answer the question or not even respond.
You could do that.
And I will.
If you're listening, go to @TYD Podcast on Twitter and tweet this @TYD Podcast. Why do you like the CSO planet cave sequence in Underworld? It is the worst special effect in Doctor Who history. #Doctor Who, #Y, and then tag me @SpacemanDylan so I can retweet this. All of them.
Well, I agree that visually it's some of the worst that we've seen ever on Doctor Who, like from Unearthly Child to the Timeless Children. I think it might actually be the worst.
Yeah, I have a note here that's like the CSO planet. Holy shit.
Yeah. You know, I hope, you know, viewers of this, including us, didn't expect to see people's legs, because you couldn't. They just look like spindly little strings.
Yeah, the legs are phasing through the planet. Also, the fact that there's a planet in this nebula, and then it takes them a whole 5 minutes to realize, oh, this is the P7E, that the same thing happened to them that happened to the R1Z.
Yeah, so I didn't really get this, unless this was some sort of, like, science, like, time distortion thing of, like, so that...
Time distort,
okay,
fine.
yes, that's... So, okay, the nebula formed around the planet, but it formed around... It just formed. So how is there already, like, a full-on civilization inside there, you know?
There's some nonsense, like, there's been 1,000 years of development on this planet, that, like, the timelines, they don't quite match up. They're like,
Yeah.
You kind of have to, ignore it. Because also there's, like, there's the Trogs, but then there's also the other, like, there's the Oracle, which is, like, where did the Oracle come from?
The Oracle is the P7E's computer, right?
Yeah, which has apparently evolved to be a sentient AI that decided to subjugate all of the people who are on the ship to mine in the mines that for something.
Yeah, wait, okay, so what... Yeah, now that you mention that, do we ever figure out what they're mining for, or what they're... No, right? Or, like, what, why...
I don't think so.
Yeah, wow, I didn't realize that while watching it. Either this time or the last time, I think.
Just that they are mining for things.
Yeah.
All the rocks kind of look the same, so it kind of looks like they're just not really mining for anything, because it doesn't really look like there's going to be any precious minerals anywhere in there. I kind of have to wonder, like, what food these people are eating.
So they're eating rocks. They actually mentioned that. They eat, like, heavily processed rock.
Maybe that's what they're mining for, but why would the AI... What?
I don't know. Maybe it's just, like, some weird, like... whatchamacallit, who's that, like, Greek guy who was condemned to push up a rock up a hill
Sisyphus.
forever? Yeah, maybe it's something Sisyphus-like, where it's, like, just this feudal, like, thing that has to just keep going on to support, like, a meaningless existence.
Maybe? But anyway, the, What are these people? These freaking robot-looking people.
Well, okay, so there's the Oracle. That's the ship's computer that's in charge.
Yes.
And then there are the Seers, who control the guards,
Seers.
who control the workers / trogs.
The Trogs.
Yeah.
who are named for the troglodytes. So again, another Terry Nation-esque name.
Yep. We cut to some trogs. One of them wants to like rise up, and this is also where the timeline gets a little weird because it's like really, as far as I could tell, really heavily implied that like they're only one generation removed from like having seen the sky and the stars.
But they don't believe that the sky. They don't believe the sky exists. They're like, stars? No, those don't exist. That's a lie built by the upper class to keep us down. Or something like that.
So Idmon, this revolutionary, has decided to revolt. And I think the seers or the guards, one of the two, decides that they just need to shut him down and make a sacrifice out of him.
And it works. Shuts down the revolt like real fast.
But there are still a bunch of people like running through the hallways in chaos, getting shot, and it's in this midst that the we didn't actually explain the minion characters. So there's what was his name, Jackson, who's in charge, and then there's Henrik.
I only knew Jackson and Edaz, who dies.
Yeah, Edaz was a Trog, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. So the only like minion I know is Jackson.
Yeah.
Sorry, can't help
and
you
then
with
there
this
was
one.
Herrick, who he's like a stand-in for Hercules, right? He's like the
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep, him.
There's also this prophecy that the Trogs are supposed to escape to the stars, which is, we didn't mention, that's why a lot of them don't believe the stars exist, but why they want to, because there's this prophecy that they need to escape the planet to the stars. If they are only one generation removed from like the people who came here, you kind of have to wonder why it's a prophecy and not just like the parents being like, look, the ship's busted, you need to fix it and leave.
Maybe they like maybe it's like, yeah, at some point we're gonna get back there, and they interpreted that as like a prophecy, you know?
I mean, this just shows the problem with prophecies, right? That anyone can interpret it however they want.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is a problem I always had with prophecies anyway, is like they're heavily they're basically just like the people interpreting them for their own gain, basically.
What like prophecies have you read? Like what? Like I don't think I've ever read
I mean,
a
like
prophecy in my
as a
life.
fictional plot device, like as a plot device, is that it's always just whenever you have a prophecy as a plot device, it's heavily dependent on the character who interprets the prophecy in order to drive the plot forward. So in my mind, it's always like it's needlessly adding mysticism or some sort of guy or woman back in time who knew exactly what was going to happen. Like I don't know. I mean, I guess it works when you're like discussing like between free will and fate, but I've just always had problems with prophecies appearing in stories like Harry Potter and Star Wars, and it's just like why is it necessary, you know?
Yeah, I have no comment on any of that.
There's also this other thing that never gets brought back like at all, where Edaz calls the cave system like the Great Tree, and Leela's like, why would he call it the tree? He's never seen trees before in his life, and the doctor's like, hey, good point. All right, moving along.
Well, it is brought back because that's where Jason and the Argonauts found the fleece. They found it on like the Tree of Life or whatever.
Yeah, no,
So
I mean,
this-
if from that point of view, it makes sense. That's why it's called the tree. But like, it's so ham-fisted the way they force it into the story.
Well, it comes back in the end where the doctor's like, yeah, maybe those old stories are actually just prophecies of the future.
Great, more prophecies.
Well, I want to talk about that line when we get there, actually. But yeah, that's why they call it the tree here. So we didn't mention that Edas is Idmon's son, I believe.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter because Edaz dies too. That whole genetic line is just like cut off in this episode. Well, so the Seers start fumigating the tunnels to, I guess, kill everyone, or at least the Dr. Leela and Edaz. And Leela and Edaz run away while the doctor's banging at the controls. And that's how episode 2 ends. And episode 3 begins, and he has this line where I was just like, wait, hang on. What? Because he goes, whatever blows can be sucked. And I was like, what?
Yeah, I should have said whatever blows sucks, because this episode blows, and it also sucks. No, I'm just kidding.
He does have a funny line after he reverses it and the gas goes back in, and we see the gas like flooding the seer control room, and they're like, oh god, turn off the gas. And then we just cut back to the doctor, and he just goes, wonder where it all went.
Yeah. I liked that moment. I like this like entire sequence.
Yeah, it's
Good way to build tension there on a budget. Just get a little fog machine, put it in a room, you're good to go.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So the doctor, I think, and Leela are conversing with Edas, and he tells them where like the Oracle room is, I believe. But he also tells them that nobody's ever been able to get in there because of the invisible dragons. This is the most Bob Baker and Dave Martin element to this story, that the guards or the seers or whoever has convinced the Trogs that the reason they can't get past this like electrified part of the floor or whatever it is because of invisible dragons. You know, Bob Baker and Dave Martin have gone down in Doctor Who history as adding just insane, like, you know, and like many plot elements to the story, to their stories, which if you actually look on their list of stories that they wrote is actually not always true. A lot of them are very straightforward. But like, for example, this one and the Armageddon Factor definitely does as well. And this is just an example of it, of like just another element thrown in, you know?
It's the kitchen sink approach.
Yeah. I like it. I enjoy it.
Yes, we all know your love for the Armageddon Factor.
Yep. Speaking of similarities to the Armageddon Factor, throughout all of this, you kind of just cut to K9 like doing his own thing.
Doing nothing is really what it is.
Yeah, just kind of rolling down the hallways like in the midst of a war zone, just like...
Well, because Jackson is like, okay, they get the genetic race banks back later, but at this point, K9 has been hooked into the ship's computer and is driving the ship, and when they've landed, K9's like, well, I'll just wait here. And then when everybody leaves, K9 is like, well, guess I'm gonna go look for the doctor. Doesn't actually even leave the spaceship though. So
we do see him rolling down the halls.
Yeah, that's it. That's all we see right now. Later on in episode 4, Jackson sends him to go find the Dr. Leela, and then he leaves the spaceship, but only for like 3 feet because the Dr. Leela are coming back the same way.
Yeah, so what Jackson and whatever his name is, Herrick, are doing as all this is going on is getting captured, or at least Herrick is. He gets captured and tortured, and this is when we get the unmasking of the Seers.
My favorite part of the Seers is how they have completely normal voices, and then they take off their like shrouds, and they've got these robotic heads, but they've got completely normal voices. And I mean normal is in a sense like there's no like post-processing effects. It's like clearly just the actor or actresses just saying their lines.
Yeah. So we don't really actually ever explicitly find out like what it is that has caused the Seers to be like this. It's just left up to tiny little clues in the imagination. And I like that. I enjoy that approach.
Yeah, you really need some
plus.
imagination to fill out this story.
I'm sure there's some like symbolic, like, you know, take you can kind of read this all through where it all makes sense.
Well,
I'm not sure about that actually, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were. I'm not going to watch it, like rewatch it enough to actually come up with anything though, so that's left to anyone who really enjoys this story.
Well, I thought you enjoyed this.
I did, but I didn't really enjoy it.
You only like fake enjoyed it?
Yeah, well, it's like I said at the beginning of the episode, I now consider this not terrible, but like somewhere between the upper levels of bad and the lower levels of good.
I like how you've basically built a tier system that's basically just assigning a numerical rating to it without assigning a numerical rating to it.
I guess. But all I have to say to that is like, who cares? Like,
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Who cares?
you know, in terms of like reviews of anything, movies, TV, what have you, anything, who cares?
I have a note here that's just wee. Pretty sure this is when Leela and the Doctor and Edaz are flying through the no gravity zone, which is also really poorly realized, I might add. There's a wooden bridge because the Doctor and Leela decide to save everyone that they find.
Yeah. Except the seers and the guards.
Except the seers and the guards. And as they're escaping, they kind of cross this wooden bridge that's really obviously built on like a set, and there's like no chasm below. It's just like the black floor of the set, and they're like, maybe they won't notice.
Yeah, so did that zero gravity like green cylinder thing kind of remind you of the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie? When they go into like the bubble room or whatever. Oh man, okay, so this is so weird, and this has barely anything to do with this, but I'm just gonna memorialize it here. So I took a nap recently.
Wow. Local man takes nap. Call CNN.
But okay, this was like a big event because I don't usually take naps. I usually just like stay awake.
Let me revise the headline. Local man who doesn't take naps takes nap.
and in the nap, while I was taking this nap, I had a dream. It was a lucid dream.
Okay, local madman has a dream.
It became a lucid dream. And I don't know, whenever I have lucid dreams, I like actually, unlike most people, just lose control of the dream. Which, maybe that says something about my psyche, but whatever. Anyway, it was this dream where like I realized it was a dream, and as soon as I realized that, like, there was no gravity anymore. And I like couldn't control like my body, and I just got like shot up into the sky. And I guess there was gravity, but like the center of gravity was like somewhere else, and I like started floating up and started like getting really scared, and then I woke up. Even though I knew it was a dream.
Wow. I've never lucid dreamed, so I can't say I have the experience, but we could delve deep into your psyche right now, what this all means, but
yeah, I don't want to continue down this tangent, but I will just say that like all my lucid dreams, I've read that like when you lucid dream, you can just control the dream, but all the times I've done it, I've like lost control of the dream.
Well, I mean, what I've read is that it requires like actual practice to stay in control of the dream because it's really easy to lose control of the dream. So you're probably just inexperienced, I guess is my point.
I guess, yeah.
I was just going to add one thing is that apparently it's like such a noted phenomenon now that so many people are having like weird, really intense dreams while in quarantine that psychologists are actually like trying to understand why this is a thing that almost everyone, well, a large majority, let's say, of people are experiencing.
Yeah, I'm not surprised about that. That's, when your life takes a totally different turn.
Yeah, it's basically collective trauma.
Wow. Dreams have always been like weird as hell though, ever since I was a little kid, so.
Mine are just way more intense now that we're in quarantine. And all of them seem to be about, the thing that I cut out of the podcast earlier.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's probably not a good thing.
No, probably not, but anyway, so the seers are torturing Herrick because they don't believe that they came from Minyas because they've been told that Minyas was destroyed and that they were the lost people from Minyas, and so they didn't know that the R1C existed or that any minions survived after they left on the P7E.
Again, kind of makes you wonder, and I'm beginning to think we just misinterpreted this because there's so much against it, but like, how long has it been?
I thought
Has
it was
really just been
1,000
one
years.
generation?
I thought it was 1,000 years.
I thought it was definitely 1,000 years for the minion for the people we meet at the beginning. But like, wasn't there some sort of time discrepancy thing of like it wasn't 1,000 years for the people on the planet, or am I just making that shit up?
No, I see. No, I don't think you're making it up, because I do remember that there's some sort of like time disparity where they've spent less time on the planet, but like I don't know how little it was, or
Yeah, maybe it was only like 990 years.
I'm just gonna act like it's been many generations on the planet, because that's the only way that all of this makes sense.
I guess.
The fact that Minyas is like a myth in their culture now.
Could just be like a myth from 5 years ago.
So, yeah, the cliffhanger, like Keon's already mentioned, is at the end of episode 3, the seers reveal their true form. And then in episode 4, the miners, the Trogs, have decided to revolt again, but only because the doctor has told them that they can leave. On the I-1C, they can be saved. So they're like, yeah, screw this. I don't want to mine for the rest of my life and eat rocks. Kind of sucks now that they're going to get on the I-1C and they're going to leave, and the I-1C's probably only got like field rations for everybody on board, and probably doesn't have enough food for all these people, but definitely doesn't have rocks that these people's stomachs have evolved to eat, and they may not even be able to eat regular food anymore. So that sucks.
Yeah, not even something I thought of, and definitely not even something the doctor thought of or cared about at the end of the story.
Well, it's clearly not something that Bob Baker or Dave Martin thought about, so...
Maybe they did once they got to the end of the story and were just like, well, this is due in like 2 hours, so it is what it is.
Episode 2 underruns by 4 minutes, and they just left it. Like, I don't know if the version you watched underran by 4 minutes, but the one I watched was only 20 minutes long. Episode 2.
I wasn't even paying attention to how long they were. But anyway, like all good rock eaters, the Trogs get on their rock bicycles and start rocking out to some rock tunes and bike over to the P7E.
You mean the R1C?
The R1C, yeah. Just insert that scene in the show notes that I'm talking about from the Neverending Story 3. Or maybe it was 2, I can't remember.
No. It has to have been 3.
Right?
Yes, it has to have been 3. 2 wasn't that bad.
2 was pretty bad.
But it wasn't bad enough. Like, what I'm saying is it wasn't as bad as that scene that you're describing. Just gonna throw this out there, but Babes in Toyland is definitely my bottom 5 movies I've ever seen as well. Like, it was the most surreal and also one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Well, now you've got me interested because, everyone knows how much I love.
It has horrifically outdated cultural depictions of gypsies. I'm gonna throw that out there.
Oh boy. Is it one of those movies that like Disney tries to sweep under the rug, that Donald Duck cartoon from the 30s where Donald is a Nazi?
No, I don't think so, because it's on Disney Plus. It's got like a disclaimer in the description. It's like, this movie contains outdated cultural references and depictions.
Mm-hmm. I heard a couple years ago that like Disney has like totally banned depictions of like smoking in their movies or something.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but I think I heard it from you, so...
Yeah, I don't know if it's true. I don't even remember where I heard it. But, like, anything that's distributed by, like, a distribution company...
It'll be kind of hard Disney to enforce now that they own Fox.
Yeah, but, like, Disney owns a lot of other companies that don't have the Disney name. So I think whatever... Yeah. So I think as long... Like, if it has that Disney name on it anywhere, I don't think there's, like, smoking in it or something like that. I don't know. I don't even know anymore.
Well, Alice in Wonderland has that whole scene where the caterpillar just trips on what is definitely probably like some form of LSD-laced weed. Anyway, so the seers learn from Herrick what the genetic rods look like. There are these 2 gold rods, about golden 8 inches. Golden rod. About 8 inches long. And so they give him 2 rods, and he takes them back to the R1C, and Jackson's like, oh, hell yeah, we got the rods. Let's get out of here. K9, like, go find the doctor. So we can leave, because K9 refuses to take off without the doctor, Leela, or mistress, as he calls her.
And let me just interject here that, like, I actually found this really funny, that, like, the Seers were, like, it was a big reveal that they were, like, robots or whatever they are. And then, like, as soon as that happened, they like just huddle up and they're like, so we should just probably just give them what they want, right? Like, it's not worth it. Like, we don't want those. We don't care about the genetic bank. Like, just give it to them and this will all end.
Yeah,
I just thought that was funny.
They're these horrifying creatures, and then they just go, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you can just leave. And this is when I was like, the doctor's like, no, doctor, stop, no, stop. Because he's talking to the Oracle, and he's like, he could just leave, right? Like, he just antagonizes the Oracle for no reason, and then he goes, you know what? I'm one of the gods. And the Oracle's like, no, the gods are myths. And he's like, I'm a Time Lord. That's me. I'm a god. And the Oracle's like, the Oracle, in what I think is the funniest scene, is just kind of like, well, be that as it may, like, just get out of here. The Oracle basically is just like, well, you know, whatever.
Yeah, that's how you know the story is good, when, like, the actual characters in it don't, like, really care about the events that they're going through. It's happened twice now. The Seers are just like, yeah, you know what? Like, who cares about this conflict? Like, just give them what they're looking for. And then the Oracle comes out and is like, you know what? Just, like, everyone just drop what you're doing and just leave.
The doctor, like, discovers the real race banks in the genetic bank. I should stop calling it a race bank. It makes me feel weird. The genetic bank in
it's like the human race.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The genetic bank on the bridge of the P-70, and he's like, and he brings him back to the R1C, and they're like, but we've already got the genetic bank. And the doctor's like, wait, what are these then? So K9 scans the ones that Herrick brought back, and he's like, these are like neutron bombs, basically. Yeah. And then K9's like, they're impossible to defuse, and I'm like, wait, what? What?
Yeah. They call them grenade. I think they actually used the term grenade in the episode, but, like...
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, but it's weird because they actually don't behave like grenades. They're on, like, they behave like time bombs, according to what we... Yeah, so...
They also have a theoretical yield of 2,000 megatons of explosives, and, you know, just for comparison, the biggest bomb that was ever detonated on Earth was a Russian nuke that they designed to be 100 megatons, but they decided to detonate it at 25 megatons. Turns out it was something like that, or 30, I think, and they messed up the calculations, so it was a 50 megaton detonation. It almost wiped out the plane that dropped it. It was so big. You can go look it up. It's a pretty wild. And that was 50 megatons. It's the biggest bomb that humans have ever built. So for some comparison, these are 2,000 megaton gold rods that the doctor's just holding in his hands.
Yeah, who made these? Who made these? Was it the Oracle?
No, it was definitely the Seers, because so the doctor takes them back to the Seers, and they're like, oh, thanks for bringing back the rods you stole. And the doctor's like, those are the fake ones that you gave us. And they're like, yeah, sure, as if. And they take him to the they take him to the Oracle, and the Oracle's like, these are not the rods. And they're like, yeah, oh wait, what? And the Oracle's like, these are grenades. And they're like, what? And the Oracle's like, well, so just defuse them. And they're like, we can't, they're impossible to defuse. And the Oracle's like, wait, what? We'll get rid of them then. So the Oracle clearly has no idea what was up with this plan.
Yeah, maybe there was definitely some, like, miscommunication, some dropped knowledge, some dropped info, some lost details between the Seers and the Oracle. Something just fell apart, something went wrong, and this is the society that we got and the devices that they built.
Yeah. Meanwhile, okay. All of the trogs are on the R1C.
Right, and Jackson goes into the room and he's like, yo, like, we're not going to be able to take off with all of you people in here. And the doctor's like, well, who cares? Just leave. And he's like, no, I don't think you understand, doctor. Like, we literally can't take off with this many people on the ship. And the doctor's like, nonsense. Like, just do it. Go and do it now.
And then they try, and they don't take off. I mean, they get off the ground, but they don't escape the gravity. But then I was like, but you know what? It doesn't actually matter, because those bombs are going to blow up the planet. So gravity won't matter, because the only thing generating gravity is the planet. So turns out to be really convenient for the Doctor. And also, like you pointed out earlier, Keon, the Doctor just, I guess, conveniently forgets that he could just take everyone in the TARDIS, you know?
Yeah, quote unquote forgets.
Just see, the fourth Doctor secretly just has a death wish, and he's like, this is the most plausible deniability way he can go out, is like, if the ship doesn't take off and they get blown up, it's like, well, I tried.
Yeah, so I actually forget how they save everyone, or how they, like, leave.
The planet explodes and the gravity goes away, and they, like, ride the shockwave of the explosion out of the nebula.
Oh, yeah. So the quest is over.
The quest is the quest.
And the Doctor and Leela just leave.
The quest is the quest.
The episode ends with a bit of insight from the Doctor that, maybe all these old stories, and, well, because, okay, so they actually mention that all of this was kind of like Jason and the Argonauts, weirdly enough.
Yeah, because the Doctor calls Jackson Jason, and Leela's like, why'd you call him Jason?
Yeah, it's something to be said about, basing your story off of, old mythology or whatever, and having those plot beats and such, as we discussed at the beginning of the episode. But there's also something for calling it out in the story, many things to be said about that.
Kind of weird.
Yeah, most stories, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, like most stories are just like mashups of bits and pieces of other stories.
I mean, yeah.
But barely any of them like actually call it out in such an explicit way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Brain of Morbius. The Doctor turned to Dr. Morbius and was like, so, Dr. Frankenstein, what are you doing?
I mean, Morbius.
And it's not like in Pyramids of Mars, I don't know any of the names of the characters from the Mummy, the Universal Mummy movies it was based on, but it's not like he turned to the character and went, so, I don't know, Dr. Jones, what's up? It's not, So.
Yeah.
But hey,
Yeah.
Maybe they're trying to like brush it under the rug that they so blatantly stole the plot by turning the stealing of the plot into a plot device by making it almost a prophecy. Whoa.
Yeah, because what the Doctor ends up saying here is that like these old stories seem to be repeating themselves, so maybe they weren't just old stories, maybe they were, prophecies of the future type thing. Which in a way, like, that's kind of a meta thing of like, yeah, Jason and the Argonauts is a story that survived so long that like a group of people in 1970 whatever 8 decided to come together and create a story around that. So in a way, it was almost prophetic that like it, obviously, the events didn't like, obviously people didn't play out the events of the story, but they iterated the story itself. So.
Yeah. An iteration upon the story. And that's how it ends. That's how it ends.
In a way, that's almost in line with, ancient, like, tradition and stuff before stories were written, and it was just, passed down through oral storytellers and such, and each one would obviously, iterate the story in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
Although largely, especially as far as I've heard, like in ancient Greece, it was largely like rote memorization and stuff. But obviously, like you tell the story again and again and again, things are bound to change.
Yep. Well, just like how every time you remember a memory, it changes slightly. So.
Yeah, that's actually something weirdly enough. Like people always nowadays, and for good reason, conflate stories with, writing, and then obviously. On top of that, TV and movies and such, the writing is their basis, but like stories existed before writing, and writing actually totally changed the way stories even exist because they like solidified this. Like writing the story down like makes it the same every single time. Versus before writing, it almost definitely wasn't the same every single time.
Yeah, writing just kind of added a permanence to the act of storytelling that may not have necessarily been there before.
Yeah, some scholars, some theorists, whatever, even Rousseau, I think, talked about this back in the 18th century or whatever, linked that to like the rise of like authorial intent as like a big thing that people care about.
Mm-hmm.
which kind of makes sense. You know, if it's this written thing that's the same every time, then you are more connected with whoever first wrote it than you are a story that's passed down orally.
Right. Yeah. Because it's always the same.
Yep.
So. Yeah, I actually don't really have anything else to talk about. Although I will say I did enjoy this more the second time because it moved a lot quicker than I remembered. So
yeah, I definitely
it may
remember,
not be as bad as I thought it was. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, I remember this being a massive slog, and I don't think it, like, regardless of the quality, I don't think it was. I think
No, it was. It actually wasn't a slog, which was the biggest surprise for me. Like genuinely, I was surprised by that.
yeah, and even compared to Monster of Peladon, like in Monster of Peladon, the same thing happens like 3 times in a row, and in this it actually doesn't. It's new things.
Surprisingly.
So one little tidbit that I wanted to talk about is that this actually came out very close to when Blake 7 first came out or aired. And Dudley Simpson, according to the Doctor Who wiki, Dudley Simpson snuck a little bit of the Blake 7 theme into the score for this.
Didn't hear
Didn't hear it either. But that's what the Doctor Who wiki says with no source.
With no source and no timestamp.
Yeah, exactly. But they're actually...
Wow, thanks, D-Who wiki.
TARDIS wiki. Now, that's a surreal experience. You know, forget everything we mentioned as being surreal in this episode. You want seriously surreal? You want to call back to, like, the Wild West weird days of, like, early 2000s internet? Browse the Doctor Who wiki for an hour.
We've definitely talked about this, like, within the past month.
Yep. So there are actually some more weird Blake 7 connections here. Which we should get into now, because guess who remembered to detail the actors in this? Me.
Woo! Let's give it a round of applause.
All right. So I didn't get everyone, but I have the main ones, I think. So we have James Maxwell playing Jackson. He's been in a lot of things. All the actors in this that I noted down at least had pretty prolific careers. But James Maxwell was in Danger Man. He was in The Avengers. He was in Out of the Unknown. He was in Bergerac. Whatever. Yeah.
Bergerac,
Yeah, the one I called Burger.
The story we got chastised for pronouncing wrong on Blake 7.
Yeah. I think it was inevitable, actually, but whatever. Anyway, we have Alan... And I'm sure I misspelled his name here because I have his name being Alan Lame. Maybe not, though. Whatever his real name is, I'll put it in the show notes. He played Herrick. He was in an adaptation of For Whom the Bell Tolls. He was also in The Avengers. He was in Dixon of Dock Green, which I believe is like a cop show. He was in Z-Cars. He was also in Blake 7. He played Chell in Aftermath. Aftermath was the first episode that had Dana in it. So do you remember that group that attacked them on the beach?
Yep.
Yeah. He was there.
Wow.
He was also in Bergerac, whatever it's... Yeah, that. We have Jimmy Gardner as Idmon. He was in the 1967 version of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He was also in Dixon of Dock Green. He was also in The Avengers, also in Z-Cars. He was in Crown Court, Emmerdale / Farm. He was in Coronation Street. He had a role in the Young Indiana Jones Adventures.
Oh, hell yeah.
And he was in Prisoner of Azkaban as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just wow.
Norman Tipton played Eidos. He was actually Artix in Blake 7.
What?
Yeah, so Artix was the young navigator guy in Spacefall and Cygnus Alpha.
No, I know. I'm just surprised. Like, what?
Yeah. So that was right around this time. And surprisingly, he was the one who, out of all these people, had the least prolific career. So he didn't go on to do much more than Doctor Who and Blake 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
weird because he was in the two biggest sci-fi shows of the time, two biggest television shows, maybe even, just in general.
Yeah. He was also in. He was in quite a few other things I have here. So he was in something called Two Up, Two Down, which I think I noted because it looked like he had a big role in that. He was in Yes Minister, Emmerdale, something called Do It, EastEnders.
Do It.
Yeah. He was in all those shows, but I think compared to the other actors that we just mentioned, I don't think he had as big a career as them. And last one I have here is Christine Pollin, or however you pronounce her last name. It's Pollon, as the voice of the Oracle. And she's been in a ton of stuff, a lot of which I didn't recognize. But she was in the Avengers, Ed Cars, and The Bill.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's all I got.
There's your connections for the week.
Yeah, trust your doctor, keeping you connected in this time. Keeping you connected.
In this time when you're all still stuck at home. This editing episode 1 of Sapphire and Steel, where we're like, hopefully this will be all over in a month or two. It's been like 6 weeks since we recorded that, and there's nothing's changed.
No.
Well, I've got no quotes this week. Keep forgetting that that's even a segment that still theoretically exists on this show.
Same here. Even if I hadn't forgotten, I don't think I would have taken anything down for this episode, this story.
No, regardless of the quality of the story, too, I don't think the actual dialogue in this story is, shall we say, the best dialogue we've ever heard on Doctor Who. But, many people say that about Chris Chibnall, too, so maybe the Bristol boys are in good company.
Yeah, that's all I had.
That's all I got. Well, for next week, I should mention that I once again went back digging through the archive to listen to our old retrospective, and there was an argument on the retrospective about what the worst Fifth Doctor story was, in our opinion, because we, meaning Keon and I, had different opinions on this. Keon swore up and down that Warriors of the Deep was the worst Fifth Doctor story we'd watched. Me, I swore up and down it was The Awakening, a story I had actually legitimately completely forgot even existed until I was listening to this episode.
Yeah, it was the one with the malice. That giant face
was it
thing.
though? Was it?
It was, yeah.
Did you confirm this?
Yep. Look it up. TARDIS Wiki. TARDIS Wiki it. It was the one where they go back in time to like the 1600s, and we thought it was just like some weird satanic Renaissance fair, but it actually wasn't. And the town was being controlled.
Yeah, they go back to because they want to see like Tegan's grandfather, so it's actually 1984.
Oh, it was?
Oh yeah, the malice is in this.
Yeah.
But it's 1984.
Oh. Yeah, okay, so yeah, and the malice, the entire gist of the story was, I think, that the malice was like just controlling the people and making them do bad things.
And then making them also reenact like the medieval period.
Yeah. Weirdly related to the episode we're going to be recording right after this for Sapphire and Steel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you'll have to wait till the end of the episode to find out which of those two that we're watching for next week. Before we finish off the episode, though, before we get there, we have an email. We have an email response from Sergeant Drano, a response to our response to his email on the Torchwood topic. So subject line is Retorchwood. Hey guys, still listening, obviously. I don't know, it wasn't that obvious. You could have just dropped off because we weren't doing Torchwood and I wouldn't have blamed you. But anyway, thank you for responding to my concerns. I'm glad that you won't be delaying Torchwood any more than you already have, though I do still wish you would do it sooner. If you're having trouble obtaining Torchwood, I do have the entire series on DVD. I'd be willing to loan it to you for the duration of your coverage so long as you reimburse me for shipping, and of course promise to return it when you're done. As far as your worst episodes coverage goes, there's one episode on the list that does interest me. I'm actually a big fan of Underworld. Do you know what date you think you will be recording for that one? Today. I remember that one grabbed me so much as a kid. I recreated the characters out of Lego. I think it had something to do with those shield guns. I thought those were cool. Also, I don't think I've mentioned this previously, but believe it or not, I truly am a fan of Adric. I think maybe because of how old I was at the time when I first saw those episodes. I was really shocked when he was abruptly killed off. All the best, Sergeant Drano, Station 7, the door. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go right through this in backwards order. On the topic of Adric, funnily enough, in our retrospective that I was listening to, we both said Earthshock wasn't the worst episode of the Fifth Doctor's era, and one of our defenses of it was, any story that kills off Adric is good in our book. So, yikes. In terms of obtaining Torchwood, I think we discovered that it's on Amazon for purchase, but actually reasonably priced, surprisingly.
Season 1, at least.
Season 1 is reasonably priced, but, we can figure out the rest once we get there. And, that was part of the reason why we delayed it, was because we had not planned ahead and had not found a way to acquire it yet at the time we were supposed to be watching them. So this was a little bit of a delay tactic, but we are beyond halfway through this Redux revisit now. So anyway, Drano, you can join Keon and your love of Underworld over in that corner over there.
Over in Timeout.
Over in Timeout.
For liking
limiters
Underworld.
in your head. Put Gan's limiter in your head. And instead of preventing you from committing violent acts, it'll just, every time you go, I love Underworld, it'll just zap you and you'll be ah.
Yeah, next thing I know, gas will be leaking into this room and I'll wake up in the village or something from the prisoner.
So, well, it's always glad to hear that every Doctor Who story has its fans, except for Fear Her.
Fear Her has its fans.
Except for Love and Monsters.
Except for the Timeless Children.
We're fans of Timeless Children.
Everyone hates the Timeless Children.
All
but
right.
you know what? I'm a fan of the Timeless Children. I liked it. I think it's actually really good. But if it was to contribute towards a Doctor Who story that everyone on Earth hates, then I would gladly hate it.
Unfortunately, I think more people still hate Love and Monsters and Fear Her. And Underworld.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, I don't know if I'm ever going to disparage it as much as I did. I still think it's the worst of the Fourth Doctor, though. Just don't think it was as bad as it was before. The gap in quality from the rest of them may not be as large.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for emailing us again, Sergeant Drainer. Glad to hear you're still listening, and hopefully when the Torchwood episodes come, they live up to your increasingly lofty expectations. Anyway, if there's anybody else who'd like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Underworld. Are you a big fan of Underworld? Join the gang. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. All at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to really like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time, we're going to be watching the splendid story known as Warriors of the Deep. But until then, the end.